Welcome to Wine Road, the wine, when, and where of Northern Sonoma County. I'm your host, Marcy Gordon, with Beth Costa, Executive Director of the Wine Road.
Thanks to Ron Rubin, we're able to keep our podcast rolling along. The financial support of River Road Family Vineyards and Winery allows us to keep recording, keep sipping wine, and keep sharing stories with our listeners. Check out their website at riverroadvineyards.com and explore their Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Old Vine Zinfandel from the Russian River Valley, as well as a finely crafted Cabernet Sauvignon from the Alexander Valley. That's riverroadvineyards.com. And hey, thanks, Ron, for allowing us to make this show happen.
Welcome to episode 202. Today, our guest is Dustin Moylanen, and he's the co-founder and director of winemaking at Acta, A-C-T-A. And I did a little research, and this stands for Acta Non Verba, which is Latin for deeds, not words. I love this because what we're trying to say is intentionality in winemaking. And so welcome, Dustin. I can't wait to hear all about the program. And this is a relatively new winery for you, right?
It is, yeah. First of all, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I can always talk about wine and all things wine related, so this will be great. Yeah, Acta is, your research is absolutely correct. Acta Non Verba, deeds, not words. There's probably a few things I should just disclose about that to get started. I have always, that's not true. For a long time, I've been aware of that phrase, and I always found it cute, and when
It's a great phrase.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and when you're naming a winery, the first thing you do is come up with 10 things you love, and someone else already took them.
I would say it's so hard at this point to come up with a name, right?
Yeah.
It isn't taken.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow that made it through that layer of naming process. And I wanted to call the brand Acta Non Verba, and I famously say that my wife, who's maybe chief responsibility is to keep me from getting too fancy sometimes.
The chief, no.
Yeah. She was like, that's too much. She's like, you're just asking a lot of people,
I love that. That's too much.
Yeah. And so the decision was made to shorten it to Acta somewhere along the line. And then, of course, we use the Acta Non Verba as our tagline, our motto, kind of our ethos. And it ties back to a few things as well.
But it also gives an entree to the story. So if someone says, what is Acta? What's the acronym? And then you can tell the story. So that's what I love about it. If you put the whole Acta Non Verba, people, it gets a little confusing. People don't know Latin, which is nobody.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the fact is, it was I find it an entree to the story. So I like that.
Yeah. It helps. The tie into the story is really this. I love everything about this business. I've obviously chosen to make it my career, and I've done a lot of things, in and around wine. And I've also been adjacent to new brands before. And one of the things that terrified me, and there's a list, was the struggle to tell an authentic story as a new brand. And so I've been next to those folks before at tastings, here and there, and you hear some of the stories, and it's tough. You hear some things that are a little on the cringe, and
yep,
and so
that'd be a good brand, On the Cringe.
Yeah.
Cringe.
And
I like that.
Yeah, or a band name maybe. And so we were thinking, do we want to put ourselves and then someday our employees out there telling a story that is that's not authentic.
Yeah, it's not real, right?
Yeah,
it's a stretch for some of them.
Yeah. Our owner. His grandfather had him sniff a cork when he was 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And he always knew he'd have a winery.
Mm-hmm.
You're like,
right.
I don't know. And so I looked at tying the Acta Non Verba for me when it really clicked was that you could tie back that thought that it's about the intention behind the thing, and the message that we want to sell our wines on is how painstakingly we think about all of the steps we make, and really the people behind the thing, rather than just saying, for instance, well, we spent a ton of money on it, so it must be good. I mean,
right.
That's a message
that's not really the message. Yeah.
is not resonating so well anymore with folks, and so it allowed us to lay that bare right away and go, yeah, there was no epiphany when at the toddler stage. It's really about falling in love with wine at some point, and
And I love that. I love the word intentionality, especially in winemaking, and also it's authentic.
Well,
it has authenticity to
it.
So I say bravo. I like it. And tell us about this wine. I like this wine too.
I think the first thing we should do is talk about this wine that we're all
Yeah, we can
drinking.
do that. So today I chose to bring you our signature red blend, and it's the only thing that we have a proprietary name for in our portfolio. So we actually call this Deeds. Just make a few barrels of this, six barrels to be exact in this vintage. It's a 21. And the history with this wine is that I have always been a fan of right bank style Bordeaux blends. And I always wondered why there weren't more of those coming out of my former stomping grounds over the hill in Napa. And I also wondered what it would be like to make one of those wines, and to find fruit like that in Napa is kind of tough. It's a lot of Cabernet. And then I come to Sonoma a number of years back, and I see all this beautiful, mature, developed and very flavorful Merlot, which is what you need as the basis to make one of those wines well, I believe. And in fact, we had some on our estate. And so finally had the materials we needed to put together a wine like this. And this particular one in the 21 vintage is like 66% Merlot, 23 Cab, and then a little Petit Verdot and Cabernet Franc. And then in successive vintages, we've also been able to add a little Malbec. So we're kind of hitting all the notes now on the Bordeaux side.
I love the mouthfeel on this.
Thank you.
I love the nose, and it's just got that really soft and kind of like spreads the tannins off the back of the palate. It's lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a big texture guy. I was, I got to tell you, it depended on the weather. If the sun was out this morning, we would be drinking a white. But then I thought, look at it. It might be our last chance to savor a red.
And that finish that just rings. I really, bravo.
It is a great finish to this, yes, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, it's meant to live in this space for us where, we make everything from Rosé and Sauv Blanc up into, Cabernets, and they have a little more tannin structure to them than this wine does. We treat this just as seriously in terms of the barrel selections, but the goal here is to do a little less time in barrel, 15 months versus 23 for the Cabs typically. And then with that Merlot being the big percentage, you just have a little jammier fruit kind of pushing to the surface. And so it lives in that space where it can be kind of the gateway drug to the Cabs for people, And I also think, though, I hope that for people that are very serious about their Cabernet, it's non-offensive in any way. You can drink it and enjoy it. You're not so far from that
Right.
far end,
But Merlot is
Oh,
a
I
great grape, and recently we do a varietal of the month feature for the Wine Road, and we did Merlot. And I'm like, how have we not done Merlot in all these years? But I was just blown away by the depth and the breadth and how beautiful Merlot is, and because it can be stylistically made very different ways as well. So I think it's lovely.
I agree, and I'll tell you this too, as a secret oft not indicated on the label. The magic ingredient to a lot of great Cabernets is a little Merlot.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
yeah.
So that kind of tells you all you need to know about it.
Right. When I first started drinking wine, I was really only predominantly drinking white wine. And so for me, Merlot was just a great introduction. It is slightly...
It's accessible.
It's more accessible than, some heavy cab. And so, yeah, I love Merlot. I tend to buy that in restaurants when I'm getting wine by the glass. Yeah, this is really delicious.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'm glad we're all
So
enjoying.
are you going to send a bottle to Mr. Deeds?
Yeah. Mr. Deeds goes to Healdsburg.
Yeah. That would be so funny.
Well, I got to tell you, we're doing a thing here shortly where we host what's called the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. So I don't know if you've ever been made aware of that, but it's a men's health initiative. It's a motorcycle ride. It's a worldwide thing. So there's rides in major cities all around the world. And I've done the one in San Francisco a number of times. But there's one in Healdsburg that I've been unable to attend because of Healdsburg Food and Wine. I'm usually double booked for that. And I am available this time that Sunday morning. And so we're going to be hosting the end of the ride at the winery. And I only bring this up because I'm telling my son about it the other day. And you're supposed to dress very dapper. That's the idea.
Yeah.
You get on your motorcycle
Yeah,
and you
gentleman.
yeah, exactly. And he says you should dress like Mr. Deeds. And he thought he was so clever. He looked at me, he'd put it all together, and I was like, I probably won't go that far.
So do you, the taste room has been open out there for now probably 6 or 8 months, I'm guessing, somewhere around there, right?
Yeah, we did do a little bit of a soft opening essentially through the months of September. We had the great honor to host Access Alexander Valley on September 1, I believe, which was a nice sort of coming out party for the property itself in a lot of ways. And then kind of maybe 5-week or so soft opening. And then in October or later in October, we kind of got rolling for real.
And do people need reservations, or do you take walk-ins?
You
or
know
what's
what?
happening out there?
Yeah, that's a good question. We say reservations recommended, So we've got a pretty good sized space, but we want to take a lot of time with folks, obviously, and give them the full experience. And they get to, obviously, we've got great hosts that I think really connect with people. And so we do take walk-ins, but it is quite helpful in most cases if they can at least give us a heads up.
It's great that that's opened. It's been a long time waiting for that to open.
So yes,
Because then it just makes a great trip. You have Hannah and Silver Oak and AVV, and you right there. It could be a day.
yeah, it's a great spot in the
Good
Alexander
neighborhoods.
Valley. It's really I call the right turn.
Yeah,
exactly.
Because and then you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, but you're right there. It's like a really sweet spot of Alexander Valley, and there are Silver Oak, Alexander Valley Vineyards.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great spot, and I need to come see what you've done there because see what the changes are. It's such a majestic view from that upper level of the winery there. You look out. I was talking before, like, well, how many acres is it? It just feels like it goes on forever.
It feels like it's huge.
And that's the thing about Alexander Valley. It's like this uninterrupted landscape. You just see vineyards and vineyards and vineyards. It's so beautiful.
It is beautiful because there isn't much residential. It's really just
There's
a few
nothing
wineries here and there.
interrupts the view.
Yeah. I mean, location.
Yes.
One of the reasons that we fell in love with that spot is simply the spot. Obviously, it's so great. You've got panoramic views, basically 360. That third floor, on the winery that you've experienced and you're kind of describing. There's not many opportunities like that, sort of in our neighborhood. And along those lines, Beth, you said it, neighborhood. I work with the Alexander Valley Wine Growers, right? I'm a vice president of the board there, and one of our big efforts lately has been to reorganize our marketing in a way that shows neighborhoods, because I think that helps people plan their day.
Exactly. That's a really good point. Because if you just say the valley, but then it's a subdivision within the valley, and it helps you really plan a day and then have at your access all these great wineries in one little location, which makes wine tasting so much more feasible. I mean, you don't want to be driving from one end to the other end in one day.
Yeah, you don't want to be driving all over the place. And I've always just not understood why more people aren't going out there, because the wines are amazing. I mean, the wineries that are out there are well-known, amazing wineries making great wines. And to me, I don't want to drive all over. So to me, I would drive all the way out to AVV and then just work my way back. And, you don't have to go to every winery on the way back. You can skip and choose, as you want to go. But it's such an easy drive. And then you're going to end back either in Healdsburg or in Geyserville. So
there's a peacefulness
out
there.
It's an easy day of really amazing wines.
Yeah, I just like the feeling. It's such a big feeling.
Yeah, I'm chuckling because, for 2 years we worked on rehabilitating the property, right? I mean, that was really the task out there. It was a lot of improving things to be safer for fires potentially, which is a scary thing to talk about, but certainly a reality.
The reality,
especially there.
Buildings covered in vegetation and just sort of a general, rather large property that had kind of become overgrown, and that was great, and so great in fact that first year, I mean, my family, we had a camper up there, and we'd work all day and sit around and drink wine in the evenings. And there was a point, to your point, Marcy, when it was so tranquil and wonderful, and I had become so used to that for 2 years that I looked around. And I was like, oh man, I got to share this with people eventually.
Yeah, people have to see.
Right,
because we do need people to come here and buy wine sooner or later.
There goes the tranquility.
Yeah, exactly.
No, there were certainly a few moments there where I was like, oh, okay, well, I better get ready to turn
you
that
get
corner.
protective of it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that comes through, and you want to share that with people, and it even at like at Hank's place, it's like you feel like you're transported,
right?
And just the views and the whole
when you sit on the porch
of
at his house and you just look across, you're like, okay, I could do this every night.
Yeah, we enjoyed a lot of beautiful sunrises and sunsets, especially that first year, and spending nights out there and stuff. Right. So pretty spectacular.
And what's funny is it's not that far. It feels like you're driving, but it's just you get to that T, and it's just a really special place. Even if you come from Geyserville and then drive along and you go past Robert Young and come through, that's one of the few places in Sonoma wine country where it's just this vastness that's uninterrupted. There's not even a tree line, really. It's just so big.
And it is beautiful. I've been out there, I don't know, a million times as long as I've lived here. And I was at Robert Young just a few weeks ago, and driving back into Healdsburg, I must have stopped. There was no one behind me. I was careful, but I stopped in the middle of the road, rolled down the window, and was taking photos. And I'm thinking, when do I stop taking photos of these?
Yeah.
But it's like, oh my gosh, that's so pretty. I need one more photo. Go in just the oak trees are beautiful. I mean, and people are missing out if
You
they're
can
not
never
seeing
get
this.
jaded here.
No, it's just so pretty. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful that you just don't take it for granted.
No.
There's really no risk of that.
Right. Yeah, it was lovely. Okay, so people should call you if they want to make a reservation and come out to visit. And what do you have a full long gamut of wines? What would happen
Yeah,
if someone comes out
what's
there? Do
in
they
the
taste
port-
four
I
wanna
wines?
know
Is it a
that
seated
too. What's in
tasting
the
or what's
portfolio?
happening?
Yeah, we can tell you about that a little bit. So we do offer a few different tastings. We always offer a complimentary wine. So that's something I'm a big fan of, whether you've just popped in or you're starting a tasting. There's always a splash of something that we adjust sort of seasonally and by release. Currently, that's our rosé, just happens to be.
Nice.
And then we've got a couple different tastings that you can check out. Again, you can call, but you can certainly go online and look. Everything is there. So actawine.com. The email to reach out to visit is experience@actawine.com, all very easy. But in terms of the portfolio of what you can taste in totality, the rosé, of course, we make a wonderful Sauvignon Blanc. We make Russian River Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. We have the Deeds, our red blend, and then we make 2 Cabernet wines, one from Chalk Hill and then one from Yountville in Napa.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
So
lineup.
you got a chip on every number.
Yeah.
We call that the working man's portfolio.
Yeah.
You know, why?
Well, no, that's what people want, right?
I-
It's a great portfolio. I can imagine this is this good. I couldn't wait to taste the rest.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I do need to get a day out of the office. I need to get out more.
And you know what's funny is I think people shy away from blends, but blends are some of the best value and best wines going on in Sonoma, I think. The red blends are really we should do a red blend focus on,
Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
because we've done like Italian varietals
Right.
and things like that, but red blends are really great. And it's kind of like helps people who think they don't like a certain thing kind of get acquainted with a wine. And this especially is a good.
Well, from a winemaking perspective, I am all in on blending makes a better wine. I mean, I know many of my colleagues.
I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's a discussion that we can
Right.
certainly have, but
Right.
and I'm not just talking about varietals. I mean, my style and our style at Acta of winemaking is to blend multiple cooperages with all of the wines. Vineyards, in terms of making vineyard cuvées, almost everything we make comes from one or two different spots. It's number one, it's hard not to be tempted to when you got the stuff all sitting around. And of course, also on the flip side, I'm a huge advocate of figuring out what everything is like first.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, you
Right.
need your baseline.
Yeah, so we keep everything separately, obviously, and in terms of these
Right.
bigger reds for months and months and months, so that we really understand what ingredients we have to cook with, essentially.
Exactly.
But then, you're so tempted. It's all there. It doesn't hurt you to pull off a little bit of this and a little bit of that and do some bench trialing. And I just always find that you figure out a way to make it better all the time. Whether again, it's just cooperages maybe in the same vineyard block or just, all of the above. It's all fair game.
All
in my
those little
opinion.
things that make a difference.
Yeah. Well, there's the intention thing again.
Yeah.
That's the deal.
So I know you personally didn't smell a cork when you were 6 months old and get into winemaking. So what did make you get into
What if I did and that was the big thing?
I know,
I'm
that would be
hiding that
so, oh my
reality,
gosh,
but
he was the one person who...
I will say this. I actually have a large contingent of my family that's Italian, and I hear stories about giving kids corks when they were teething and stuff.
Oh,
I don't think that ever happened to me, so I'm not claiming that.
That's
by
not
any
the
stretch. I do remember though my great grandpa just pouring one red on top of the other and not caring at all, which that they were totally different wines.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that red was red or whatever. So did not come from a sophisticated wine spot at all, and grew up in the Midwest, and so. Not exposed to winemaking culture or anything like that. I had to work my way through school, and I landed at a pretty great spot that had a pretty great wine list and a really savvy wine director, and he kind of took me under his wing, and as my interest grew, he nurtured it, and eventually I fell in love with wine. So
Isn't that great? It just takes one person really
Yeah.
to really make that connection,
It takes someone,
shepherd you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really, a couple of weeks ago, we had Carol Shelton on the show, and that's what I always loved about Carol. I think the way she talks about wine, it's like everyone can understand it. She doesn't talk over anyone. And I think if you're starting to learn about wine, that's important.
And
it shouldn't be
having-
intimidating. It's
Having
just,
an innate enthusiasm.
yeah, right.
That goes a long way too.
when I was young and getting into wine, of course, my avenue was through hospitality, right?
Right.
Through serving wine and then eventually becoming a sommelier and working as a wine director for a number of years. My mission was my youth and wanting everybody to be less serious and less gatekeeping on wine.
Right.
I wanted my peers to also drink wine, and most of them weren't.
Right.
And I was just seeing that in a lot of cases, it had to do with people telling them, well, here's what you should and shouldn't like, and here's
Right.
why.
Yeah, the
And
rules.
this is the better wine,
Yeah.
and this is
and the whole like, oh, you shouldn't like this kind of wine or that kind of wine because that means you're not sophisticated, which is just crap.
Well, and how to
because
describe it? It's too
your
complicated.
palate is your palate, and you should feel free to explore.
Yeah.
Vino taster.
Yeah, right.
We used to joke and say I had a group of friends that we did a regular tasting for, many people who were pursuing the path of the quartermasters, and we used to say, what, these in the publications and stuff. I mean, all of the things that you consume otherwise. Nobody's buying the cereal advocate, we would say. There's no list that tells you, well, I mean, these are the best flakes you've ever had, and I mean, there's just a reason why. And so we would sit there and scratch our heads and go, boy, but people are really bought into all this stuff. They really follow this stuff die hard. And the other thing too is the group dynamic of wine tasting, right? Whether you're actually at a winery or you're just out,
Right.
And you're, if there's any more than 4 of you, probably half, like this or that, right?
Right.
Let's take 2 wines. But there's always going to be someone that's more vocal that speaks up, and then some people go, "Yeah, I guess I agree. I guess."
I call it the jury duty syndrome.
Right.
You
you just
one,
agree
the
with
one
them.
juror is like, "Let's wrap this up. He's guilty."
Totally.
And then everyone goes, "Okay, I want to go home," and you think, "Oh my God, this is the justice system."
Yeah.
But one strong voice can really, switch everything. But yeah, it is interesting because I think when people are new to wine, they're uneasy and unsure, and they're looking for confirmation and direction. And you forget that I am the direction. You let your palate lead you. It's time for our Fast Five. Who do we have on the line now?
This is Shane with Wilson Winery.
Hey, Shane.
That's great. Great to hear from you.
What's your Fast Five?
So my Fast Five is a pulled pork recipe,
You've already got me.
right? Goes well with any of our Zinfandels.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Oh, my gosh. Yes. Okay. So what's in
So you got a pork tenderloin. You got to add a little bit of like a sweet teriyaki barbecue sauce, a little bit of brown sugar, some apple cider vinegar, and about a cup of chicken stock, and let that sit in the crock pot for 5-6 hours.
this? Yeah.
Wow. I bet that's delicious.
I think that was 5 ingredients.
I don't know. And then after 5 or 6 hours, it might even take more than that. And then you just turn it off and pull all the pork apart with a couple of forks.
Yep,
and
a couple forks. And add, if you want to do like brioche bun, just classic. I'm not the biggest coleslaw person, so I forego that, but I know people love it. So.
I like it I've had it both ways, but
Kinda
I
classic.
kind of like it with the coleslaw. Yeah. Because it's usually spicy, so that kind of cuts it. But then, yeah, paired with some Wilson Zin, I can see it already.
That sounds great.
That sounds great. We will put all that in the show notes. And thanks for calling in. Talk to you
Cheers.
soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Shane.
Because I think actually to maybe answer your question about every day you should probably get up and be like, what am I getting into wine for today? Because you got to. That's what you're doing.
What am I doing today?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the plan? That's what I tell myself.
But even the commitment and the decision, you're a fairly young person to say, I'm going to, go into wine. That's a lot of faith. That's a great, because we're in kind of weird times right now. And I think that's really a testament to the power of wine, that I'm going to stake my, livelihood on this. I'm going to go into this and to be able to, gather that energy to make that happen. I think that's really great.
Thank you. I mean, I hate to bring it up even, but we did this over. I mean, it was the COVID thing.
Right.
I think there was so much inner reflection during that period of time, and you're kind of going, these big, huge things can happen in the world, and like, what am I doing? That was, people were asking themselves that, and that was kind of when we took the leap. Had been looking at some properties for a few years, and when we found this one, and we really thought it could be the right one. I mean, one of the other things was how the timeline unfolded, and it had a lot to do with if you were, if you can't have guests, and that's
Right.
not what your business is about right now,
Right.
like what a time, and you'd feel so bad for your colleagues that are, shut down and having to, protect and care for everybody and not having people come in the doors and you go, well, I mean, all I need to do right now is clean up a property.
Right.
Right, it
I'm
gave you
working
that-
outside. This is what that was what you could do.
It gave you lead time.
Yeah.
Gave you lead time to develop and, dig deep, and you don't have to worry about opening the doors.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you are you going to have a wine club, or what's the situation?
We
there?
do have a wine club, and in fact, we just launched in January, and it's actually going quite well. We're very encouraged with the results. We do a wine club that's based on your selection of the wine. So, what my personal opinion aligns with a lot of what we know in terms of industry feedback, that people cancel a wine club when they look over in the corner and see that stuff that came in a box they didn't ask for.
They didn't want any of that,
Yeah.
right?
So, and I see a lot of people moving to this model, so we're certainly no geniuses here, but that's ours. So, you can select. We essentially have monthly releases except for the summer. I mean, you heard me kind of name everything earlier. If you minus the hot months,
Right.
for shipping purposes, really more logistically than anything. And so, people that just love our Cabernets can go that route, and
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It does make sense, but I mean, that's a lot of work. On the winery end,
Yes,
to
to have it
customize.
customized
You
every
end up with
shipment.
1,000
Yeah.
wine club members. You're trying to customize for everyone. It's
Well, so I have a little history in this, and I can tell you that, where I was prior to Acta, so I, just worth noting, I was at ZD Wines in Rutherford over in Napa for well over a decade. And we ended up kind of in a similar scenario with the wine club there, and that actually came from a point where every time someone wanted to leave the club, you would just make an exception.
what would
for
it make
them.
you stay? Yeah, right. Well, exactly.
Interesting.
So
yeah.
pretty soon, it is more work to do monthly releases, but it's a lot of work is when you just try to hold on to people,
Well, yeah.
and then everybody's got just a wonky situation in their wine
Right.
club.
Right.
So at least this way, it's pretty cut and dry. You don't open the customer profile and see 10 specific notes, in there. So it's an easy club for people
Right.
to be a part of.
Well, I'm excited. I was super excited when you opened. I was, it took a while.
Yeah.
And I just think it is a great neighborhood. I think it's definitely well worth people to plan their itinerary and just head out to the end to AVV and work their way back. And I mean, that is a great neighborhood. That is a nice day of wine tasting.
Yeah. To me, a big important thing about this, and something that I definitely want to share, is that we want to be it was to be a part of the neighborhood.
Right.
And part of the reason of taking on the project out there, which I think we've alluded to a few times, but again, it needed a lot of cleanup and a lot of TLC, obviously, was I just always had this crazy idea. My heroes in the wine business were the people that did these things in the 50s and 60s and built their stuff from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's what I want to do, which is idiotic. But it was nonetheless,
In
when
hindsight.
when you fall in love with that sort of, you have
The
that
idea.
romanticized idea, it's in there. And so, and you can't do that every place, clearly. And, without naming names of wine regions and things,
Right.
I mean, in most places, you just can't.
Right.
Well, you know what? In
Exactly.
Sonoma County, you can find beautiful little chunks of land that just need some of your love and some of your hard work. And so, we wanted that for that piece of property, and we want to, whether it's after me or maybe after 10 generations, we want to leave, leave it better than we found
Right,
it.
Right.
And we want our neighbors to be proud of it too.
Mm-hmm.
So the other wineries that are there, there are some limited residences, but they're around and they're all long time.
Oh, yeah.
We want them to look across the way or drive
And see
by
it beautiful. Right.
and be proud that it's in the neighborhood,
Right.
Yeah.
obviously. So that's a big thing for
That
us.
is a big
Right.
thing. Sonoma, the land of reinvention.
And totally unrelated, but I guess Jimtown's going to be opening again, Jimtown store.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
So I'm super excited about that.
Yep.
That's a draw. Yeah.
Well, it's a draw, and it's also someplace to eat when you're out in Alexandria.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be great
bummer.
for all of us out there. I mean,
Yeah.
assuming that they've got deli put back together
Right. And can cater and do that kind of stuff, for all the wine events.
That really
and
does
stuff.
help kind of anchor the day.
It does. It totally does. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Doesn't take much to get me excited,
Well,
obviously.
I think we know that after so many episodes.
yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna have to I'll plug and say John's Market in Healdsburg, which I just love.
Big John's, yeah.
There's
I'm
nothing
getting-
like it.
Well, but I mean, if they open up at Jimtown or when they open up again, I'm gonna have to share equally and patronize
One
both.
for you,
Yeah.
one for you, one. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But Big John's is like a a museum of food, and it's a cornucopia of all the things you can get.
We have visitors that come from all over the country and want to know, how to plan their day. And we often say, stop at Big John's, get your sandwich in the morning, pack that, and then picnic somewhere along the way. Yeah, Big John's is a huge draw. It's crazy when you go there at lunchtime.
Well, I'm there pretty much every day for lunch, so
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
part of the herd for sure. But I love it. It's great.
Astounding. Okay, let's see. Anything else that we need to know, to talk about, to tell people about coming out to Acta?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm trying to think of what we have coming up across the summer here for events. Of course, we'll be out at Taste of Sonoma. We're going to be at Healdsburg Food and Wine, both, grand tastings in both locations. I did mention the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. If anybody's listening and you've got a motorcycle and you like to cruise around wine country, that's a great one.
Cool. That's in the end of May or
that'll
middle
be the end of May. I
That
think
sounds
it's the
like
19th,
fun.
Sunday the
Yeah.
19th. I want to say.
Yeah.
So a couple weeks out. That is again. It's a great health initiative. Men's health awareness, and it's something that I've done a few years. So I'm a big believer, and we want to grow the ride and all of the things that it points to. I think we're trying to be as involved as we can community wise. We will be hosting Access Alexander Valley for the next couple of years at the property. So there's many ways to come out and see us.
And is that Labor Day weekend? When is that?
It is.
Access?
It is. Although we are pushing it a little bit further into the fall block, starting next year.
Okay.
And currently our tasting room is open Thursday to Sunday. So we will add Wednesday in as we get further into the summertime and ramp up towards harvest.
Right.
But yeah.
The tasting manager, I forgot his name. What is
Mark.
it? Mark. Okay.
Yeah, Mark Hernandez.
I met him at our last event.
Yeah,
he's great.
guy.
He is great, and he's been super responsive and helpful, and he's on the top of our list because he answers our emails.
Yeah, Mark is a wonderful guy and a great communicator. So
Yes.
he's just the guy we need. He's doing an awesome job for
Yeah,
us.
I'm excited about that. Super. Okay, anything else?
All right. Well, I think we'll put the URL into it's acta.com.
It's actawine.com.
Actawine.com.
Yep, all
okay.
one word.
We will put that
actawine.com.
in the show notes so people can contact you and come visit. And this wine is great. Thank you for bringing this. And we're so glad you were able to join us today.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was super great. I'm super glad we met.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you.
We'll see you on the wine road.
Bye.